Everything we've done up to this point with trig has been based on a right triangle. So if it's a right triangle, then you can use sine, cosine, and tangent and set up your pictures. And then even on the stuff we did on Friday that wasn't right triangles, or we had some triangles within the system that weren't right triangles, we could still get it all worked out. Because we had two right triangles, we forced them to be right triangles. What happens when we have a triangle that's not a right triangle? Can we still solve? And the great thing about this is, yes, we can solve, but it's a little trickier than what we've done. It's not as easy as the straightforward sine, cosine, and tangent stuff. We're not necessarily going to deal with where these theorems come from. I can show it to you if you're really interested, but it's not relevant to the scenario. We're taking a more algorithmic approach to this, meaning here are the steps you need to do to solve the problem. Okay, so we're taking an algorithmic / computational approach to this. The first method we have is called the law of sines, LOS, law of sines. And the law of sines says the following. There are two equal signs in that statement, and you can't solve two equal signs. You're going to pick and choose. So if you're using A and B, then you would just get rid of this C part, and that goes away. If you're using A and C, you cover up the B stuff. If you're using B and C, you cover up the A stuff. So you're still going to set up an equation. And the law of sines is real simple. It says that you take the sine of an angle over its side opposite it. It must be equal to the other angle, sine of the other angle, over its corresponding side. The thing to remember about law of sines is it only can be used when you have this relationship of an angle and the side opposite it. Without this ratio, the law of sines doesn't work. Okay, any problems so far? Let's try it. Solve for x. Set up a proportion. Solve that question.
Yep, I have the answer.
Well, hold on a second there, Speedy Gonzalez. Give everybody else a chance. You guys know who Speedy Gonzalez is, right? Okay, just wanted to make sure. When you get done, you want to ask yourself a simple question. Does my answer make sense? Natalie, what can you tell me about the possible answers for x? What would be an answer that you get for x that you go, I don't think that's right?
A negative answer?
Negative answer would be bad. Anything else? Any other number would be good to go?
Or, a side length greater than 14.
Well done. So we know now, based on what Natalie just told us, that if your answer makes sense, it should be somewhere between 0 and 14. It's got to be greater than 0 because we don't deal with negative lengths in this class, and it's got to be less than 14 because of the small, medium, large theorem. Leo, do you have a question or an answer?
Answer.
Hold on. Nick, what do you got, buddy?
I got 10.43 after round.
Can somebody confirm 10.43?
Yeah.
Yes. Not a very authoritative yes from a lot of other people, so there may have been some problems there. First things first, set up the proportion. How'd you solve that, Nick?
Cross multiply.
Beautiful. X times 47 equals 14 times the sine of 33. Get x by itself by dividing. So notice I didn't take any approximations until the very end when I plug that monster into my calculator and get 10.4, what'd you say, 10.43?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So for this, do you need at least 2 angle measures? Like, well, if you have 2, you have 3.
Depends on what you're looking for.
Okay.
Johnny, how would I find angle, I'm sorry, not angle, how would I find side A now? Now that Nick has done all the work and cranked out that x is 10.4, how would I find side A?
You could use triangle theorem to find angle A.
Uh-huh.
And basically do the same thing to find side A.
Perfect. 33 plus 47 from 180 would give you angle A. Set up your same proportion using this ratio again, sine of 47 over 14, because we want to try to avoid calculated information. and do it again, and next thing you know, we got the triangle all solved. Any problems here? This is the easier scenario. Here's the more difficult scenario. Solve for A and B. This one will be fun. I'm going to talk while you're calculating. Does law of sines apply here?
Yeah.
Yes, because I have an angle in the side opposite it. So I can set up a proportion there. Then cross multiply and solve that proportion. Find the angle A. Or B, depending on which one you want to do first. Doesn't matter. Solve it. I understand. How do you get rid of the sign? Either way? Inverse sign.
Amber. Not here.
Thanks, Einstein. Any smoker's line? Did you look out there?
No, I didn't.
Check. Big snowdrift she could be hiding behind. She's pretty small too.
Or maybe she's in the snowdrift.
She could have met Ford,
Yeah.
just hanging out. That'd be a great idea. Hope you cut a hole in the ceiling though, if she's in the smoker's line. The smoke out.
That's
of the way.
true.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
But then that might blow our cover because you can
It could be,
see
yeah.
coming out.
Kind of things you gotta think about.
Yeah.
Anyone? Bueller? What can you tell me about the answer to this, Kaylin? Are you doing A or B?
A.
Okay, so if you're solving for angle A, what can you tell me about the measure of angle A?
It's gonna be bigger than 25.
Beautiful. Anything else?
No,
Nothing else?
not right now.
Not right now. Maybe later. Okay. How about the other end of angle A? We know it's gotta be bigger than 25, but it has to be less than,
Zero. Or what?
less than 0.
No, I didn't know.
Okay, maybe you can stop talking. Gotta be less than 155. Okay, so walking around, most of you set it up correctly, but struggled to get those answers. So let's do the calculation together. Sine of 25 over 5 is equal to the sine of A over 9. How many people got that proportion? Raise your hand. Good. How do you solve it, Jocelyn?
9 times the sine of 25
Beautiful.
is equal to 5 times the sine of A.
Love it. Now what?
I did, I didn't know what to do. Should I have done the inverse?
Not yet. What do you gotta do first? How do you get rid of that 5?
Divide by 5.
So 9 times the sine of 25 divided by 5 is equal to the sine of A. Now, how do I get rid of the sine, Jocelyn?
The inverse.
Inverse sine of this side, and basic law of algebra, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other side. Plug that puppy into your calculator on the right side. That cancels and left with angle A. And if you did it correctly in your calculator, you should get 49.5. Where'd that come from? Listen.
180 minus 25 minus
Stored in your calculator.
Good. Triangle saw, find that. Which again, we're using calculated information, but it beats having to go and do a bunch of nastiness. Okay. 2 scenarios for law of sines. Using the information to find the side, that was the first one. Using the information to find an angle, a little trickier. How we doing? Any questions before we move on? Okay. And let the games begin. Law of cosines is going to be used in a scenario where you can't use law of sines. So notice in that triangle there, I don't know an angle and a side opposite that angle. I have what's called, well, we'll get to that in the next slide. Basically, law of sines doesn't work. It's not a right triangle. I can't set up law of sines, so I have to figure out some other method, and this is called the law of cosines. This will not be as easy. There they are. Now, before you start writing like mad people, realize that all 3 of these are identical. I just switched the orders of the letters. What's important to realize is that if I have the side A over on the left-hand side, then I have to use the cosine of angle A, and each of these values are the B's and the C's are the sides we didn't talk about. So staying with that model, if I wanted to find, use the law of cosines to find side x in a triangle that has x, y, and z, I would just do x squared is equal to y squared plus z squared minus 2 times y times z times the cosine of x. If you want to write down all 3 of those, go ahead, but again, realize they're the exact same thing. Also, while you're writing it down, I should have included this, but you would probably want to put these in parentheses. You'll see why in a couple minutes. Yes, sir.
So is this like Pythagorean theorem?
Kind of, yeah. The law of cosines comes from turning a triangle into a similar situation that we had with the mountain problems. But where it comes from is not important. Applying is what we're looking for. Yes, sir.
If you accidentally do the law of cosine when you still could do the law of sine, do you get the same answer?
You should, yeah. Anything else before we move on? The other question is, can you use law of sines and law of cosines on a regular right triangle? Yes, but it's silly. It's way too much work. Nathan.
How come there isn't a law of tangents, or is that just not possible?
I don't know why there isn't. Sorry. A couple things to remember about law of cosines. You'll see as we work through the next 2 examples, it's not an easy calculation to do. You only should ever have to do it once. If you find yourself doing the law of cosines more than once, you're doing something wrong. You'll see why in a couple minutes. Okay, do law of cosines once, and then if you have more calculations to do, you would use law of sines for that, because law of sines is a lot easier. Oops. That's a little dot there. Let's try that. There we go. Okay, 2 scenarios for law of cosines. The first one is this one, the side angle side scenario. It is the easier of the 2.
Do you want us to solve it?
I'm sorry?
Do you want us to
Well, we're
solve
going to set it up together. Fiona, can you help me set this up, please? We're going to look for A, by the way. I'll get you started.
Do a squared equals 4 squared.
I like it. Great game, by the way. Guys, 4 square? Dad, do you know what I'm talking about, or am I just showing how old I am? Okay. Do you not know 4 square?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Plus 7 squared
Uh-huh.
minus
Yep.
2.
I'm going to throw parentheses in there.
Cosine of A.
Cosine of?
A.
Oh, we know A.
Oh, 52.
There you go. Unfortunately, that's the easy part. Let me get rid of that. And I got it right here. in this scenario, you can do this all in one shot in your calculator. Just type it in as one big long thing and it will give you an answer. Go ahead, practice. Make sure you get an answer like 30 point something or another. And then when you get an answer of 30 point something, tell me what's wrong with that answer. Nathan.
Do I have to put in the square root because A is still squared?
Beautiful. When you solve this and you get 30.5 something or another?
Yeah.
You get a squared, so as Nathan said, you got to take the square root to get down to about 5.5. Is it 5.53?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
No. Okay. It is conceivable and probable that you would eliminate this second step because you can do this whole shoot match in your calculator. And notice what happens. Once we solve the law of cosines, all of a sudden I have the relationship of an angle and the side opposite it. So then if I want to solve for the other angles, I can just do law of sines, because law of sines is a lot easier. Before I move on, do you have any questions? Because it's going to ramp up pretty quick here. No, we're good? Okay, second scenario. Side, side, side scenario. Given all three sides of a triangle, first of all, I guess before we get started, we should ask the question, is that a triangle?
Yeah.
How do you know?
Yeah.
There's 3 sides.
Those the two smaller sides are greater than the largest.
The two smaller sides add up to be bigger than the third side. So the triangle inequality proves that it is in fact a triangle. What do you want to do first? What side do you want to solve for first?
Do we have the sides?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Dan. What angle do you want to solve for first, Brandon?
G.
Any particular reason? Feeling good about G?
Yeah.
Excellent. Camilla, what do you want?
D.
D? Any particular reason other than he already took G?
No.
You could do G if you'd like. Would you like, you want to stay with D?
Sure.
I mean, because you could copy him.
No, I don't like how you do.
You like D?
Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. Christelle, which one do you want?
O.
O? I'm guessing because you're realizing that we're getting to a point and that they already chose D and G, and so you have no affinity for the angle O. You just picked that because the other two were taken and you don't want to copy. Okay. The problem is, if all three of them do the calculation, they will get different answers, which that can't happen. There's only one possible triangle here that has this scenario. So in a side, side, side scenario, you have to remember this chunk of information. Always solve for the largest angle first. We're going to go biggest to smallest. And it has to be done that way. Because if you don't, you will get incorrect answers. Why that happens is not for us to discuss. That's a pre-calc topic, so you'll have to wait 2 years. But there is something called the ambiguous case for the law of sines, which causes a whole bunch of problems. So if we stay with this format, we'll be okay. Therefore, if we're going to follow that rule, which angle do we solve for first? O. Okay? Set it up. And then try to solve it. And we'll see how you do. Some of you will make mistakes, which is good because we want to point out the mistakes that happen now so that you don't make them later. And I can pretty much tell you the mistakes that'll happen because I've been doing this for a while, but we'll let you make those mistakes and then we'll come back to it. Once again, remember we're solving for O because it's the biggest angle. Well, you could, but you gotta screw a thing into it and where it's gonna be. It would look like this, but much bigger. Is it square plant?
We have a really,
How do we do as a team?
well, 6 people made it to finals. Wait, no, 6 people made it to state individually, and PA had to go down and made it. 3 people made it to finals, and PA was going to the finals in first place. But we didn't get that one. And it's not even because I felt so close, because she didn't know what we talked about, you know.
That hurts. That hurts. So I don't like stuff like that where, you know, like in track, just be the first person to cross the finish line. It's not, you know, there's no judging involved.
We
It's,
were first at regionals, first at sectionals.
that ain't cool. Like gymnastics, diving, all those things too simple. You get a judge with a crappy day. Don't look at me like that. You try out solve that problem. I'm just saying, I don't like the subjectiveness of certain
Yeah.
sports where they're evaluated by some chucklehead human being.
It was even funnier because the person that gave us the one, like first place ever, was one of the creators of PLI.
Nice.
Isn't that kind of for like every sports, like refs? Yeah?
Well, no, but, yeah, but it,
Well,
Yeah, but if you
Eight-
score a goal in
right.
soccer or something,
And,
it's not.
and if it's like,
but if they overrule or make a bad call, it's so obvious that it can be discussed. But in
Well, not
a judging thing, if Dan does it, are you a diver?
No, I swam.
You swim, right, okay. So if you're a diver and the judge gives you a 2, nobody's gonna come back and say, well, why'd you give him a 2?
Yeah.
Because it's just like, well, that's what I felt about their dive, and I thought he didn't hold his pike long enough, blah, 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 you know, there's a lot of fluffiness in there, whereas if you and I are running a race, it's pretty much whoever crosses the finish line, there's not a lot of discussion there. And in soccer, yeah, I mean, an official can affect the game, same thing's true in volleyball, but for the most part, you just play the game, you know, game over, you have 3 goals, I have 2, you win. Whereas gymnastics, you know, that's another one, what else? Diving, gymnastics, that's about it.
Ice skating?
Ice skating is another one,
Oh,
good,
yeah,
yeah,
that's right.
Those
yeah.
Olympic sports.
Basically any sport that has a judge.
Correct.
That's what we're
Yeah.
trying to get.
That's what we were
All the
trying to fix,
sports
thank you for that
yeah.
clarification, Dan. Yes, you would be judged in sports where they have a judge. Thank you.
It's the reflexive problem.
Okay, so there is the setup of the problem. Now what we need to discuss, and in fact, we're gonna copy this onto a different screen, so I've got some working room here. Okay, so that was 19.7 squared equals, help me out,
8 squared.
8.8 squared plus
12 by 9 squared.
minus parentheses 2 times 8.8 times 12.1 times the cosine of O. Question?
How do you know which one's A, like which side is A, which one's B, and which one's C?
Doesn't matter.
But then
In
how
this
do you
case, I've got O. So I'm looking for angle O, so this side has to be the side opposite angle O, also known as side O. These two, they don't matter.
Okay.
Okay? What's the first step in solving this equation? No. Put your hand down. No. Erica, what'd you do first?
I didn't get that.
All right, okay, so what would you do first?
Multiply by this.
I like it. 19.7 squared equals 8.8 squared plus 12.1 squared minus 2 times 8.8 times 12.1. I have no clue, but you will help me by telling me that it is equal to 9.6 times the cosine of O. I like that. It's a good start. Greg, what would you do next?
Would you do 19.7 squared?
Sure, why not? What's 19.7 squared, Greg?
388.09.
And then I'm guessing you probably want to stay with the format there and do an 8.8 squared
Yeah.
and get?
77.44.
Plus a 12.1 squared?
146.41.
Minus parentheses 2 12.96 times the cosine of O. Moving along. Beautiful. What do you want to do next? Branch, what are you going to do next?
Add the 177.64.
Okay, so 388.09 equals, these two added together would be 223.81.
But wait, 8.8 squared is 77.44964. Yeah.
Uh-oh. Crikey. All right, erase this. It's 4.
Yes.
Okay, so that would give me what here?
220.85.
223.85 minus 212.96 cosine of O. What do we do next? I'll tell you what some of you would do, which would be wrong. Some of you would then take 223.85 and subtract 212.96, right? Yes, you would. And that would be wrong. Why, Faith?
Well, I actually have a question. What is the point of having parentheses? Because
To eliminate the exact scenario that I'm talking about now.
like,
Many people, when they get to this point, take this minus that.
well, yeah, you can't do that because they're not
Yeah.
like they're not the same.
The other thing that happens without the parentheses is people will add these two things together and then subtract 2 from it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, there's a lot of ways to go down the dark path in this problem, so I'm trying to eliminate those. Question?
I was gonna say what we should
Do tell.
we should subtract 223.85 from 388
And get?
and get 164.24.
Then what?
Then you find good question.
Thank you. What you got?
Do you divide negative 212.96?
You bet you do. And what do you get? Hold on, let me do that in my head. Negative 0.77. I didn't do it in my head, I cheated. How do I get O now? Inverse cosine. So inverse cosine of negative 0.77 equals O. And yes, sir.
How'd you get negative 0.77?
Took 164.24 and divided it by negative 212.96. Undo multiplication by division. O is equal to
140.35.
Okay, let's go back to the problem and see if that makes sense. How do I do that? This. Here. Yep. Is 140.35 a reasonable answer?
Yes.
Sure, why not? Because it says right there, 140 point. I got 140.5.
Yeah, because you just did you store your answer for O? No.
You just hit 0.77?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you store it, you get this.
So then would that be like wrong on like a quiz or a test?
You would probably lose 700 or 800 points on that. On a 2,000 point quiz. It's not too bad. It's only, like one, little less than a half. Simple solution. Don't make that mistake. Okay. Let's go back to this scenario and I will show you how I would do it just to save yourself some time, because this is a lot of unneeded work. I would start by taking the first line and moving the squared terms over to the other side without multiplying it out, because I'm going to let the calculator do the grunt work. I'm going to take 19.7 squared minus 8.8 squared, 8.8 squared, minus 12.1 squared, and that's going to be equal to negative 212.96 times the cosine of O. That's going to save me a little bit of calculation and writing stuff out. Then divide by this. So 19.7 squared minus 8.8 squared minus 12.1 squared, all divided by negative 212.96 will equal the cosine of O. And if you're feeling saucy, you don't even need to multiply this out. You could just take all this business up here and put it down in the bottom, also known as the denominator. It's a, yes? Is not a good way to start a
Okay,
question, start
just a
over.
question,
Doesn't help things. You can't change to and think that's gonna slide.
When you take the inverse cosine of 164.24 over negative 212.96 without dividing them with 4, it comes off as like 140.35 or 0.5 instead of 140.35.
Correct.
And so
So the difference here is this answer was given to me by taking 0.77, not the stored value, and you want to use a stored value whenever possible.
okay, so 140.5 would still be correct.
Correct. Good. We good so far? Is there anything wrong with this method? No. This, however, is a little quicker and easier. You're writing less down, trusting the calculator that it can do these calculations. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes because you're going to forget order of operations. You're going to make mistakes because you forget minus signs. It's okay to get an answer here of negative 0.77. That's not an angle measure, that's a trig value. Let the calculator figure out whether or not that angle is acceptable or not. If you do the calculation, you find out that the angle measure is negative, then you probably did something wrong. Going back to the example, once I know O, how do I solve for the other angles? Yep.
You just do law of sines.
Law of sines, right. This is where you don't want to do law of cosines again because you see how much fun it is. You want to go to law of sines. And I solve for G next because G is the next biggest angle. Remember, we're going from biggest to smallest.
Why are there 3 dots sometimes?
We talked about that, didn't we? What's the 3 dots mean?
Therefore.
Therefore.
But then the upside down would be because, right?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I trust you. You have an honest face. Why would you lie to me?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, why would I lie about that?
Exactly.
What's stupid is
So people think you're cool.
Hey guys, I know that the upside down 3 dots is because.
Is that your nerd voice?
Yeah.
Hey, I know you all know about the 3 triangles being therefore, but if you flip it over, do you know what that means?
What's it mean, Mr. Reedy?
No, that was you. I don't know. What's it mean, Leo?
Because.
No.
Because.
There you go. Where'd the 16.5 come from? What kind of magic, what kind of evil devil work did I use there? Alyssa?
We're just subtracting 140.5 and 23 from 180.
Yeah, also known as a triangle sum. Correct. Okay? Again, this is going to be difficult. The geometry is not difficult. It's the algebra that's going to trip you guys up. So I will probably send you the answers to tonight's homework ahead of time so that you can check your work as you're working through it. The other thing that will help is ask yourself, simple question, does that answer make sense? Did I solve for the largest angle and get 20 degrees? Well, that's probably not going to be the right answer. Yes, sir.
After you do the law of cosines to find the first angle, why do you have to go to the second largest angle?
Ambiguous case for the law of sines. Okay. If we just remember to go largest to smallest, we will be golden. Yes, Viraj, you have a question?
Yeah, can you post the answers to day 7?
The answers to day, what was day 7? Is
On 4 and 5.
that what we just did today?
We did part 2 today.
You want the answer to part 1? Sure. Tournament's coming up, so I found a couple fun basketball pictures for you.